Hello, welcome to week 4 of high school mythology. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up our slides so that you can see our schedule for this lecture. All right. So last time we talked about the lovers, Cupid and Psyche, Pyramus and Thisbe, and Orpheus and Eurydice. So this week we're going to be looking first of all at Ceyx and Alcyone. So Ceyx was the king of Thessaly, and Alcyone is his wife. So Alcyone is the daughter of King Aelus, who is king of the winds, and Ceyx feels compelled to go on a journey to visit the oracle. So in order to get there, he's going to have to cross the sea. And because Alcyone is very familiar with the way that the winds can affect sea and make it dangerous, she begs Ceyx not to go. However, he will not be moved to stay. And so she tries to reach a compromise with him where she tries to get him to at least let her go along with him if he insists on taking the journey. However, he doesn't want her to be in danger out on the sea, so he tells her no, that she needs to stay at home. Well, indeed, her fears do come to fruition, and unfortunately, Ceyx's ship is wrecked and he dies at sea. As she continues to long for him at home, unaware that he has died, she evokes the pity of Juno, who goes through a line, right, and gets to the point where, gets to the point where Alcyone has a dream in which it is revealed to her that Ceyx has indeed passed away. So she goes and she finds his body. And as she goes into the water to mourn him, she begins to change into a bird. Therefore, the gods have had pity on her and also on Ceyx. He also turns into a bird so that they can remain together. And because of this, whenever you have this 7 days of calm over the oceans, that is said to be when Alcyone is brooding over the eggs in the nest. And so these days are called halcyon days, named after Alcyone. So in this myth, we see another example of where mythology is used to explain natural occurrences like these days of calm on the sea. So the next story that we have is the story of Pygmalion and Galatea. Then we have Baucis and Philemon. Then we have Endymion, then Daphne, and then Alpheus and Arethusa. So we're going to go ahead to the next slide because we're going to talk a little bit more in depth about Pygmalion and Galatea. So in the story of Pygmalion, it is revealed that Pygmalion hates women and only loves his art. And at the same time, in history, when this is being written, this story of Pygmalion, there's another writing that is taking place, and that is Juvenal's satire on women, which is full of misogyny in the same way as Pygmalion and his hatred of women. So in this satire on women, Juvenal complains about what he calls is the decay of feminine virtue. He says that educated women are repulsive and that the problem with women is that they're trying to rule over their households. And he also blames the men too for not making the women behave as he would consider it appropriate. So he has this famous saying, which translated into English is, but who watches the watchman? So he's, kind of implying that he's the one who not only has to make sure these women are behaving as he thinks they should, but also that he is watching these men and trying to instruct the men on how to make the women behave. So in this similar kind of way, Pygmalion thinks that women are beneath him, right? Until he makes this statue of a woman that we think about it a bit more really shows us again, not only is Pygmalion misogynistic, but he's also narcissistic, right? And that he falls in love with his own creation. So it's not a woman, living, breathing of flesh and blood. It is a woman which he has created. But Aphrodite grants him this answer to his prayer because he longs for a woman just like his statue. So Aphrodite actually turns the statue into this real woman. She's given the name of Galatea, which means she who is milk white. And then Pygmalion and Galatea have a son, Paphos, and Paphos lends his name to Aphrodite's favorite city. So the next story that we're going to take a look at is Baucis and Philemon. So this has a dual importance. First of all, it shows how important it is to display hospitality during this time and in the culture. And it also shows, again, how mythology is used to explain these natural occurrences. So in this story, Jupiter and Mercury go down and visit Earth as they do from time to time. And in this story, they visit Phrygia and they go from house to house looking for someone to welcome them, looking for hospitality, and they are turned away again and again until they get to the very small home of Baucis and Philemon. And then, although Baucis and Philemon do not have a lot, they share what they do have with Jupiter and Mercury, who are disguised, of course. So it's not obvious at this point that they are gods. And in the course of their eating together and drinking wine, Baucis and Philemon notice that no matter how much wine they drink, it's always still full. Then they start to recognize that they must be in the presence of God. So Jupiter and Mercury reveal themselves, and then they say to Baucis and Philemon, you will be rewarded for your show of hospitality. We will spare your lives while we flood the rest of Phrygia for their inhospitable treatment of us. So that's their first reward, that their lives are spared. Then their home begins to expand, and they have more in terms of wealth and prosperity. And also the gods offer them a wish. And so what Baucis and Philemon wish for is to be together forever. And so the wish is granted. They remain alive until they get to an old age. And then they start to turn into trees. But there's something very unique about these trees. They share a single trunk. Although one becomes a linden tree and the other becomes an oak tree, they are still together sharing that one trunk. So that is also, as we see, an explanation for why a linden tree and an oak tree share a single trunk. Then we get to the story of Endymion, which is a kind of a switch from what we typically see. Most of the time, we're going to see stories of where gods pursue mortals, but this time we see it as a goddess who pursues a mortal. The goddess is Selene, who is goddess of the moon, and the mortal is Endymion. Now, sometimes he's said to be various different things, but the majority of the stories have him as a shepherd. So Endymion is admiring him as he's shepherding his sheep on Mount Latmus, and she wants to just gaze at him all the time. So she casts this deep sleep upon him. She has this happen, and that way he is always there where she can watch him whenever she wants to, because he's always asleep. And in addition to that, even though this was what she asked for, she deals with some sadness too, of course, because he can never wake up and return her love. So the next story is kind of where we get back to the more typical pattern where we have a god pursuing someone. And this is Apollo's pursuit of Daphne. So Daphne had no interest in getting married. Her father kept trying to bring different suitors to her. She was not interested in any of them. She wanted to remain free and single and independent. So as she is bathing at one point, Apollo sees her and immediately begins to pursue her, even though she does not have any interest in him. He just keeps pursuing her. And of course, because he's a god, he wins, right? And she begins to cry out to her father for help. So her father helps her, interesting way of helping, by turning her into a laurel tree. And another thing is, not only is she stuck now forever, this laurel tree, but then Apollo makes the laurel his sacred tree. So she still ends up being intertwined with Apollo against her wishes. Then we have a kind of similar situation with Alpheus and Arethusa. So Arethusa is a huntress. She's a worshiper of Artemis, and she wants also, like Daphne, to remain single, free, and independent. However, Alpheus, a river god, comes upon Arethusa, and he wants to have a relationship with her. So she begins to run away from him, and she calls out to Artemis for help. So Artemis helps her by turning her into a spring. However, Alpheus turns himself back into a river and makes sure that his river is connected to the spring of Arethusa. And so that is also an explanation of where you have the spring of Arethusa, which is sacred to Artemis. It's an origin story or a creation story for that particular spring. And so the waters continue to mingle. The river Alpheus and the spring of Arethusa, they mingle together forever. So again, we see this inescapable fate when a god is pursuing a mortal. Even though we have help, so to speak, given to these women, the help really doesn't keep them away from the gods who were pursuing them, obviously. So the next story is considered to be the first epic in Greek mythology. Jason is the first European hero to take on this great quest. This lines up too with the hero's journey. This idea set forth in Joseph Campbell's book, The Hero with a Thousand Faces. So there's a pattern to the hero's journey. We'll see this again with Odysseus, with Aeneas, with Theseus, Perseus. But you start off as the hero living your ordinary life. Then you get a call to adventure. And there are other steps that we go through as we go through the journey of a hero. And we'll talk more about that next week. But I just wanted to go ahead and mention, this idea about the hero's journey. So, Jason, by, the accounts that we see, he's called a hero, but something I want you to think about as we go through this story. Do you think Jason is a hero or not? I'm not going to tell you what I think. I'm going to leave that up to you, because I would like you to mention on the classroom page, do you think he's a hero? Why? Do you think he's not a hero? And if so, why not? So this also is something too, we'll kind of see, and I know you've read this, right? So you're ready. This wraparound of a human sacrifice motif to this myth. So we start off with a king who grows tired of his wife and marries another woman. Now, he and his wife have 2 children already. They have a son and a daughter. So the wife that he has spurned is fearful of this new wife wanting to kill her son so that the child that the new wife has with the king will be able to then take the throne. And her fears are not unfounded, as indeed this new wife plots to have the son killed. However, Hermes sends a golden ram that saves both of the children. And as the ram is fleeing with them, unfortunately, the girl falls off, but the son remains alive. Then when he gets to the place of safety, for some reason, oddly enough, he sacrifices this golden ram that saved him to Zeus as a thanks offering. At any rate, this golden fleece becomes something that is very special and sacred. So, meanwhile, we have Jason, whose uncle has taken the throne from Jason's father. When this has happened, Jason has been sent away to be safe and until he comes of age to be able to overthrow his uncle so he can take his rightful place as heir. So his uncle has been given this prophecy that when someone comes wearing one sandal, that person is going to overthrow you and take your throne. So whenever Jason appears wearing one sandal, his uncle knows, right? Oh no, this is it. This guy is going to take my throne. So Jason presents his case and says, look, my father was king. I'm the rightful heir. You're getting older anyway. Just, let's just peacefully do this. Let's put me on the throne. And so his uncle pretends to go along with it. So he gives him a mission. He says, okay, we'll do this. But first of all, you have to go and get the golden fleece. Now, his uncle feels like Jason will die trying to go get this golden fleece. And so he feels then that he'll be safe, right? And he'll be able to keep this throne. However, Hera helps Jason. So that's the first help that Jason gets. And she kind of spurs on these other heroes to want to travel with Jason in order to get this golden fleece. So some of the travelers include Hercules, Orpheus, who plays the beautiful music that we've mentioned before, Peleus, who is the father of Achilles. So they set out on this journey on a ship called the Argo. And so that's why they're called the Argonauts, Jason and the Argonauts. So they set out, and on the way, Hylas, who is Hercules' armor bearer, he goes overboard, and Hercules just forgets about everything else, forgets about this mission to help Jason get the golden fleece, and he goes overboard to grab up his armor bearer, Hylas. Then along the journey, they get help from Phineas, this old oracle who is stuck on this island and unable to eat food because every time he tries to eat the food, the harpies come down and ruin it. However, the sons of Boreas, who is one of the winds, they are able to chase the harpies away. Phineas is able to finally eat food, and he gives the heroes instructions on how to safely navigate through dangerous parts of their journey. So once they do reach the place where the golden fleece is, King Aeetes is there, and he says, yes, you can have the golden fleece, but you've got to go through these trials. So very much like Jason's uncle back at home, who says, yes, you can have the throne, but first you have to get the golden fleece. King Aeetes gives these trials or tests to Jason, feeling like Jason will not live through them because King Aeetes does not want to let go of that golden fleece. So the task that he gives Jason has to yoke 2 bulls whose hooves are made of bronze and who breathe out fire. Then after he gets them yoked, he has to plow a field with dragon's teeth, which will then turn into these men in armor who will attack and try to kill Jason. However, Hera, as I mentioned before, is helping Jason. So she goes to Aphrodite, goddess of love, and asks for help for Jason. So Aphrodite sends Cupid down to make Medea, the king's daughter, fall in love with Jason. So Medea helps Jason. So here's another help for Jason. She has magical powers too. She's often referred to as a witch. So her help also comes in handy in that way too. So she decides to go against her father and help Jason. So she tells him how to successfully yoke the bulls, and then tells him how to successfully defeat the dragon's teeth warriors by throwing a stone in their midst so that they attack each other. So once she has done this, Jason says that she can go with him. He promises to love her and take care of her. And especially because she has betrayed her father by helping Jason, she really would not have a place there anymore. So she leaves her home after having helped Jason. Then they get to Corinth. Once they get there, Jason decides that he's going to marry the daughter of the king of Corinth. Also at this point, Medea and Jason have 2 children. So when Jason tells her this, of course, she's angry because she has helped him. She's left her home, and they have these children together. And suddenly now he says that he wants to marry someone else. So she decides, first of all, that she must get rid of this woman. And she sends her children with a cloak, claiming that it's a gift to celebrate the marriage of the king of Corinth's daughter and Jason. But really, it is an enchanted cloak. And as soon as the king of Corinth's daughter puts it on, she burst into flames. After this, Medea begins to consider what it means for not only her, but for her children to be cast out. She has fears about her children living a life of enslavement and servitude, and she does not want this for them. So she does something very horrible and very drastic. As I mentioned, this kind of goes back to the idea of human sacrifice at the beginning of this myth. There's kind of this loop around. So what Medea does is kills both of her children. So of course, when Jason finds this out, he's extremely grieved because he's lost this woman he was going to marry, and now he's lost his children. But before Medea can get punished in any kind of way, she is taken away in a chariot drawn by dragons. So I'd love to hear your thoughts about Jason. And do you see him as a hero, or do you see him as not so much of a hero? All right, so the next stories are stories that call our attention to pride, and especially that certain kind of pride known as hubris, where a mortal thinks themselves to be equal to or greater than the gods. So we start off with the story of Phaethon. So Phaethon finds out that his father is the sun. So he is the son of the sun. And he goes to visit his father. And his father is rejoiced, to see him, and tells him, I'll give you whatever you want, whatever it is you wish for. And his father swears on the river Styx. So we've talked about that before. When a god or goddess swears on the river Styx, that is a binding oath that they cannot break. And it just reminds me again, too, of how foolish it is to swear on the river Styx and promise that you will grant the wish when you don't even know what it is. And so this backfires, of course, because what Phaethon wishes for is to take the place of his father and to drive the chariot, pull by the horses, so that he can take the sun out into the sky. And his father warns him, this is not, good. You cannot control the horses, only I can. But he's already sworn on the river Styx, and Phaethon does not listen. He does not back down. So of course, when Phaethon tries to take the chariot across the sky, he's unable to control the horses. The world begins to catch on fire, and an invisible river god is able to put the fire out, and then Phaethon is shot down and falls to his death. So hubris, right? Don't put yourself up as equal to the gods. Then we have the story of Otis and Ephialtes. So they are twin sons of Poseidon and Iphimedia. They are giant. They think they are equal to or greater than the gods. There's that hubris. They kidnap Ares and they try to kidnap Artemis. However, Artemis deceives them and they end up killing each other. Then we have the story of Pegasus and Bellerophon. So in this story, Bellerophon, he is a source of infatuation for the wife of King Glaucus. And so King Glaucus, of course, does not like that. So he sends Bellerophon on some dangerous missions, such as killing the Chimera, which he successfully does. And so after Bellerophon is able to kind of complete these tasks along with Pegasus, he starts to think that he is just as good as the gods. And so he decides he's going to take Pegasus and go up to Mount Olympus. Not a good idea, right? We could see this coming. Why couldn't he? So Pegasus is smart enough to recognize, oh, no, I am not going to fly you up to Mount Olympus. So he bucks off Bellerophon, who then falls and ends up just being this desolate wanderer. Then we have a story that probably most of you are familiar with the story of Daedalus and his son Icarus. This is where we get the saying, don't fly too close to the sun. So King Minos has imprisoned the inventor Daedalus and his son Icarus. Daedalus is also the one who designed the labyrinth, which we'll talk about, of course, when we get to the story of Theseus next week. And Daedalus comes up with a plan for him and his son Icarus to be able to escape. So he makes wings so that they can fly to safety. However, he warns Icarus not to fly too close to the sun because the wings will melt. But Icarus does not listen. And of course, he flies too close to the sun. And exactly what his father warned him about, that is exactly what happens. And he flies too close to the sun, his wings melt, and he falls to his death. So we'll be looking this week at a painting on the classroom page about Icarus and his fall. So be sure that you answer the questions about that as well. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week. And I will see you again, or you'll see me, right? Soon. Goodbye.